Welcome learners to the last lecture on theories of conduct. We have completed 2 lectures on this particular topic, theories of conduct. Today would be the last lecture on theories of conduct. We have talked about rational self-interest, we have talked about egoist altruism, we have also talked about what is called Epicureanism. We will be talking about the general good theory in today's class and some other theories of conduct. What is the general good theory? To the question of human conduct, one answer is given by utilitarianism. The answer is very simple. Act so as to bring about the greatest good possible. So, when we talk about the general good theory, what is the general good theory? This particular general good theory is the answer to a very simple question, that is, what is human conduct? To the question of this human conduct, the answer is very simple, which is you act so as to bring about the greatest good possible. So, your conduct and behavior should be in such a way that it should bring about the greatest good possible. So, this is what is called or what is meant by the general good theory. Among the alternative actions available, one should choose the one that produces the maximum total good or the one that has the best total consequences. For example, when you are aiming at producing happiness, then you should act such as to create happiness for all. So, when we talk about general good theory, we are talking in terms of utilitarianism, that is, you act or conduct yourself in such a way that it produces the maximum total good or the one that has the best total consequences. There is no doubt that exact calculation in this regard may be difficult, but we can have what is called good approximation. Sometimes it is difficult or even impossible to know which alternative will be the one which can cause maximum happiness or lessen the maximum unhappiness. In such situation, one should utilize the best information available at the time. Let me give you a very simple example. If a child studies hard, if a child completes the syllabus and go and appear in the exam, the result would be happiness for all the members of the family as well as the teacher. Because the child has completed his or her syllabus, the child have studied hard for his or her paper, and after his exams, after the results have been announced, the child will be scoring good marks because he or she has studied hard, worked hard for the exam and has completed the syllabus. So, there would be maximum happiness out here. The child will be happy, the parents will be happy, the teacher will be happy. So, this is what is called causing or producing the maximum happiness, which is the general good theory. Another example, suppose one's father and a famous physician are trapped in a burning house and you have the alternative to save only one. Just imagine this scenario. You have a father and a physician who are trapped in a burning house, and you have only one alternative to save either one of them. The utilitarian's answer would be to save the physician, because if she or he is saved, then the life of many other people will be saved, because he is a physician, he is a doctor, and he would be more of use to the other members of the society, because with his practice he can save more lives compared to the life of a father who has been caught in the building. So, this would be what is called the utilitarian's answer of saving the doctor or the physician. However, imagine another situation. Your best judgment may or your best intentions may harm others. Let me give you another example to elaborate this particular statement, that is, your best judgment or intention may harm others. Suppose I am driving a car and along the way I give a lift to a person, and I meet with an accident along with the person whom I have given a lift to, and the person dies. In such case, to say that death of the person would not have occurred had he not been helped. So in spite of my best intention, in spite of my best judgment to help a person who was stranded on the road, and I had given him a lift, but we met with an accident and the person whom I have helped dies in the accident, then this would mean that in spite of my best judgment or in spite of my best intention, it has led to the death of another person. So, can the act of helping here be treated as wrong? The utilitarian ethics can be stated very simply. The proposition that a certain act is right follows as a conclusion from the following two premises. So, my act of helping others, can it be treated as wrong? The utilitarian ethics can be stated very simply, and according to them, the proposition that a certain act is right follows as a conclusion from the following two premises, that is, the act that will produce the greatest total good is right. This act will produce the greatest total good. Therefore, this act is right. This is the first premise, that is, the act that will produce the greatest total good is right. The second premise, the consequences of an act or the consequence of an act is often difficult or even impossible to determine. That is because the relationship between the cause and effect is extremely complex. What may happen, one never knows for certain. Nevertheless, utilitarianism has been challenged by philosophers in many ways. So, these are according to the utilitarianism principle, that is, which is based on two premises. So, the act of helping others, that is, I have helped that person who was stranded in the road, my intention was good. I did not know that it was, or I was going to meet with an accident. So, this is what the second premise says, that the consequence of an act is often difficult or even impossible to determine. So, what I did, my intention was good. However, this ethics or the principles of utilitarianism has been challenged by philosophers in many ways. How have they challenged these ethics of utilitarianism? Suppose I make a promise to provide some services to you. Should I keep the promise when I believe that doing so will produce the most good? Should I keep the promise because I need it? To explain how utilitarianism has been challenged by philosophers, let me pose this particular question. Suppose I make a promise to provide some services to you. Should I keep the promise only when I believe that by doing so will produce the most good? Should I keep the promise because I made it? Like, for example, to further elaborate this question, I as a doctor, let's say I am a doctor, I have made a promise to you to meet you at 4 p.m. which is my appointment, which is the appointment that you have taken to meet me. However, when I was getting ready to see you or meet you for your appointment, an emergency case came which called for an immediate operation. Avoiding this immediate operation would cause death to the patient. So, Obviously, in such a situation, not keeping the promise would be the right thing, because you are in a better position, because you are not the person who need immediate attention. The person whom needed immediate attention had to be operated upon. So it was a situation of life and death. So this becomes especially pressing in cases of promises made that no one knew. Out here, what happened was, you have made a promise, but because of emergency situation, you do not keep the promise. However, the promise was not kept because you had an emergency. Let me give you another situation. There are certain promises which no one knows. Let's say two explorers are lost during their trekking, and there is enough food to keep only one of them alive. Or we can say another example, two people who are climbing high peaks are in a very dangerous situation. They are climbing, they fall down, and the rope can support only one of them. One, because both the weight is going to because of both the weight of the two person, the rope will be damaged. So one of them has, only one can be saved, and only one has to be cut from the rope. So in such a way, in such a situation, the person who is willing to die, who is willing for his rope to be cut, would make the other person make a promise to look after his children on his friend's behalf, while the second man may be justified when he returns home and declares the fact. Let me repeat this particular example again. There are certain promises which you make, but you do not follow the promises because of certain situations, emergency situations. So when you do not keep the promises in such a situation, it is a right thing, because the promises that you do not keep is because you have to save someone else or because of emergency. However, there are situations when promises are made but no one knows about it. I was giving you the example of two people who have climbed mountain peaks. Only one could be saved. So the person who is about to be saved makes a promise, or he is made a promise by the person who is about to lose his life to look after his children. However, when he returns home, will the second man be justified when he returns home, when the man who has been saved, when the man whose life has been saved, can he be justified? Will he be justified when he returns home and declares the fact? No one would ever know that the promises was made, since the friend cannot afford to educate or rear up both the families. His first duty would be to rear his own children and to forget about the promises to the dying man. So this is another situation. The promises have been made by the friend to his dying friend while climbing the high peaks. However, when he comes home, he does not declare the fact, because the promises has been, no one knows the promises because it has been made just between the two of them. So when he comes home, he does not have enough money to educate or to look after the families of his friend who made him, who asked him to help his children by making him promises. But he does not have enough money, so he just looks after his own children and forget about the promises made to his dying friend. So in such a situation, what would be justified? Because the promises has been made and these promises have been made only to the dying man. So, it is only the friend to whom the promises have been made, it is his conscious or it is his own self-interest or moral conscience which comes into play in such a situation. We have been talking about the traditional version of utilitarianism. We have been talking about these examples which are the traditional version of utilitarianism, according to which one should perform only the act which has best consequences. This traditional version is also known by the term or by the name act utilitarianism. This traditional version of utilitarianism is also known by the name act utilitarianism. Now we will talk about, other than act utilitarianism, we will be talking about what is called rule utilitarianism. If we adopt this version for deciding the rightness of individual acts, there will be many cases judging the worth of an act in terms of consequences of the individual act will be either be not possible, or it would result in a state of moral dilemma. To come out of this difficult situation, rule utilitarianism, version of utilitarianism has been adopted. So, what is rule utilitarianism? When we talked about act utilitarianism, it was the traditional version of utilitarianism where we talked about doing things for the goods of the majority. Now, this particular rule utilitarianism holds that we should not judge the rightness of an act by its consequences, but by the consequences of adopting the rule under which the particular act falls. For example, one important rule in law is that a person who is known to be innocent should never be found guilty. He should not be charged of crime for which he or she has not committed. Sustaining the conviction of the man even after we know that he is innocent should clearly violate this rule. However, whatever be the consequences for this particular conviction, the consequences of adopting any rule that permits conviction of someone who is innocent is very bad indeed. But again, a question may be raised. How do we assess the goodness or worth of the rule itself? Consider the consequences of not having such a rule, and you can easily assess the worth of the rule. Finding the best rule, that is a rule whose adoption would have the best consequence, is often difficult. Mostly such rules will not be simple but complex. For example, can we adopt the rule never take a human life or never kill a person? Because in this case, if we are talking about never take a human life or never kill a person, how about when you act in self-defense or in a battlefield or in a war where you have to kill your enemy in order to save your own life? So, is killing in self-defense or is a battle killing in a war considered to be good? The adoption of such a rule should result in the death of innocent and survival of thieves and murderers. A better rule in this regard would be never initiate aggression against other human beings or never kill except in self-defense. The point is that adopt the best rule and stick to it without any exception. The best rule is that the rule whose adoption results in the best consequences. So, when we talk about the better rule in such a situation, it would be never initiate aggression against other human beings, never kill except in self-defense. So, this will be the best rule which has the best consequences. Now, let us talk about theories of conduct which is not based on consequences. According to utilitarianism, act utilitarianism or rule utilitarianism, what we should do and what we should not depends on the consequences. But do we think that every theory of human conduct depends only on the consequences of the act of the rule? Are there no right making features of the act? There are thinkers who hold that some acts may be good or bad independent of the consequences of these acts. We should therefore consider not only the consequences which lie in the future, but also the conditions under which the act was performed which lie in the past. For rule utilitarians, the correctness of a rule is determined by the amount of good it brings about when followed. In contrast, act utilitarians judge an act in terms of the consequences of the act alone. So, when we talk about rule utilitarianism, it means that the rule is determined by the amount of good it brings. Act utilitarians talked about in terms of the consequences the act brings. Then we have the concept of what is called theory of punishment, which is the utilitarianism theory of punishment, which is entirely future looking. That is, one should punish in order to, not because of. According to utilitarianism, punishment is justified because it may, one, improve the offender, perhaps teach him a lesson so that he will not repeat his offense in future, he may not repeat his criminal activities in future. B, deter other people from doing similar offenses, and C, protect the people, potential victims from such offenders by isolating them from the rest of the society. So, we have just talked about theories of conduct not based on consequences, that is, according, your conduct is according to rules, you conduct yourself not depending on the consequences of the act or the rule. Then we also have talked about what is rule utilitarianism, where we have talked about how we are in such version we are deciding the rightness of individual acts. That is, there will be many cases judging the worth of an act in terms of consequences of the individual act. So, rule utilitarianism is acting according to the consequences. Then we have what is called the traditional version of utilitarianism, that is, according to which one should perform only the act which has the best consequences. And also we have talked about and given example of the general good theory, which is the theory which serves or act or rules of conduct which are followed to bring about the greatest good possible. So, with this lecture I have completed what is the theories of conduct. Thank you so much.